The hum of fluorescent lights was something I had grown used to over the years, but tonight it felt different. It wasn't just a sound, it was a warning. A vibration in the air that made the skin on my arms prickle. The office smelled faintly of coffee gone bitter, of paper warmed too long under the heat of the printer. My desk was cluttered with half-finished reports, sticky notes curling at the corners, and a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. I should have been home by now, but instinct kept me glued to my chair. I knew deep down that something was about to happen. Something that would split my life in two. For years, I had been the quiet one, the reliable one. The person who stayed late to fix errors no one else noticed, who answered emails at ungodly hours, who covered for others so the department wouldn't fall apart. My boss once told me, half-jokingly, that I was the backbone of the office. But what people forget is that a backbone doesn't get credit. It only carries. Wait until it cracks. So when the meeting was called that afternoon, when everyone was gathered in the conference room, I should have known. I should have recognized the silence that settled before the announcement. I should have read the way eyes avoided mine. And yet, hope is a cruel thing. It makes you believe you matter, even when you don't. The moment his name left my boss's lips, the world shifted. Not mine, his. He stood up with practiced modesty, smiling the kind of smile that pretends to be humble but aches to be seen. He thanked everyone for their support, for their guidance, for believing in him. I watched as the room filled with applause, hands clapping like gunshots in my ears. My chest tightened. My throat burned. And he never once looked at me, the one who had trained him, corrected him, carried him when he stumbled. Every clap was a betrayal. Every smile around the table was a knife. And the silence, the silence was the deepest cut of all. My boss refused to meet my eyes. My colleagues avoided the weight of my stare. It was as if I had already been erased from the room. But humiliation has a way of mutating. By the time the applause died down, something darker was taking root inside me. Not sadness, not despair, something sharper, something alive. That evening, when everyone else had left, I remained. My computer screen glowed against the empty office, casting long shadows on the walls. I told myself I was staying to finish reports, but the truth was I couldn't leave. Not yet. I needed to see if the betrayal went deeper than I thought. That was when I found it. A folder buried in the shared drive. Its name was simple, unremarkable, just his initials. But it wasn't supposed to be there. My heart pounded as my cursor hovered over it. The silence of the office pressed against my ears, and for a moment, I wondered if I should walk away. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. It pulls you into places you can never return from. I clicked, and there it was. Pages of documents, spreadsheets, presentations, familiar words, familiar formatting. My words, my reports, my nights spent hunched over this very desk, my sacrifices woven into every line. Only now, they bore his name, his signature, his timestamp. The realization was a cold, sharp blade against my spine. This wasn't an accident. He had copied everything. Weeks ago. He had planned this, carefully, methodically, long before the promotion was announced. My hands trembled against the keyboard. I scrolled further, the bile rising in my throat. It wasn't just my work. There were emails, too. Emails I had sent to my boss with drafts, ideas, strategies. He had stripped them bare of my identity and dressed them in his own. He had taken my voice, my mind, my future. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the glowing screen. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't betrayal. It was theft. And something inside me shifted. I closed the folder slowly, the screen dimming back to my unfinished reports. My reflection stared at me from the glass of the monitor. Tired eyes, clenched jaw, a face that no longer looked like a victim. Revenge. The word slipped into my mind like a whisper, like a promise. But revenge isn't rage. Rage burns too quickly. Revenge is patience, precision, art. And if he thought stealing my future would go unpunished, then he had no idea who he was dealing with. The clock struck midnight. The office was silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. Shadows stretched across the floor like fingers reaching for me, urging me to move, to act. I gathered my things, but my mind was racing faster than my body. I whispered to myself, low enough that only the walls could hear. If he wants to take everything from me, then I'll take everything from him. But as I walked toward the exit, something caught my eye. A light flickering down the hall. His office, still on. My breath hitched. He had left something behind, and when I stepped closer, I realized he wasn't gone at all. The hallway was dim, Only a few ceiling lights left buzzing faintly above me. Most of the office had already sunk into silence, but a single glow bled from under his door. I froze halfway down the corridor, my breath shallow. He was supposed to be gone. Everyone was supposed to be gone. And yet there he was. My heels barely touched the carpet as I moved closer. Each step deliberate, every nerve on edge. The closer I got, the more I could hear. The faint murmur of his voice, low and secretive. At first I thought he was on a call, but then another sound joined his. A woman's laugh, sharp, mocking. I stopped just short of the door. It was cracked open, only slightly, but enough for me to see the corner of his desk. He sat there, leaning back in his chair, a whiskey glass in hand. Across from him was a figure I recognized immediately, our boss. My stomach twisted. I leaned closer, heart hammering against my ribs, straining to catch their words. "Nah, she never saw it coming," he said, his voice dripping with smugness. Months of work, and I took it all with a few clicks. She handed me her future, and I wrapped it up with a bow. My fingernails bit into my palms. My reports, my files, my life. He wasn't even pretending. He was gloating. The boss swirled her drink, her lips curling into a smile I'd never seen before. "You've done well." Exactly as planned. She was useful, yes, but too quiet. Too compliant. We needed someone who knows how to take what they want. Her words were a knife that slid deeper than his theft ever could. It wasn't just him. It was her. The promotion hadn't been stolen behind her back. It had been handed to him. With her full blessing. I felt the room spin, but I forced myself to stay rooted. My ears strained against the pounding of my own blood, needing to hear every word. "She'll leave soon," the boss continued, sipping slowly. "People like her always break when they're overlooked. And when she does, she'll vanish quietly. No mess, no fuss. We'll erase her name from the files. And no one will even remember she was here." He laughed. That laugh. Loud, sharp, careless, as though I was already gone. Nothing but a ghost clinging to the walls. My hands shook, but not from fear anymore. It was something hotter, darker. Rage sharpened into resolve. They wanted me erased. They thought I would disappear without a sound. They didn't know me at all. I backed away slowly, careful not to let the door creak. Each step away from that office felt like shedding skin, like leaving behind the woman they thought I was. By the time I reached my desk, I already knew. My revenge wouldn't just be against him. It would be against both of them. But revenge isn't declared. It's planted like a seed, watered with patience until it grows into something no one can escape. I sat down at my desk and pulled up my computer again. My fingers flew across the keyboard, not to work but to copy. Every stolen file, every stolen word of mine that sat in his folder. I made duplicates, tucking them away into hidden drives, evidence, proof, weapons. And as I worked, I noticed something else. Buried inside the folder, deeper than I had gone before, was a document with a strange title, Transition Plan. My pulse quickened as I opened it. The words stared back at me, cruel in their simplicity. Phase 1, absorb her workload. Phase 2, undermine her performance metrics. Phase 3, secure promotion. Phase 4, terminate quietly. Terminate quietly. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just theft. It was elimination. I was never meant to survive here. My mouth went dry. They weren't waiting for me to leave on my own. They were planning to destroy me from the inside, step by step, until I had no choice but to walk away in shame. I slammed the laptop shut, the echo ringing through the empty office. My breath came in shallow bursts, my chest tight. For a moment I thought about walking away, about quitting before they could sink their claws deeper. But then I remembered his laugh, her smile, their voices dripping with confidence that I would simply vanish. And in that moment, I made a silent vow. If they wanted to erase me, then I would burn myself into the walls of this place, so deeply that my shadow would never leave. If they wanted me gone, then I would make sure their downfall was tied to my name forever. I stood, gathering my bag. The office suddenly too small for the storm building inside me. The hallway stretched out in front of me, long and dark, leading to the exit. Each step echoed with my resolve, but just as I reached the door, my phone buzzed. A single notification, sharp against the silence. An email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read only one word: careful. The email's glow burned into my eyes long after I read the single word. Careful. No sender, no signature, no trace of where it came from. Just one word. sitting in my inbox like a warning scratched into a wall before the fire consumes it. I stood in the empty hallway, phone trembling in my hand. Was it him? Was it her? Some twisted game to frighten me into silence? Or was someone else watching all of this unfold? I tapped the screen, searching for clues. Nothing. The sender's address was nothing but gibberish, a string of characters that led nowhere. But whoever sent it knew enough to time it perfectly seconds after I discovered their plan. My chest tightened. If someone knew, that meant I wasn't the only one digging into this. But were they an ally? Or another enemy waiting in the shadows? I didn't reply, not yet. Instead, I slipped the phone back into my bag and walked into the night. The city streets outside were washed in neon and rain, cars hissing by as if the world hadn't just shifted beneath my feet. I pulled my coat tighter, every reflection in the wet pavement making me paranoid. Was someone following me? Watching me? Or was it just the weight of the email pressing on my mind? Sleep didn't come easily. When it did, it was jagged, broken, filled with flashes of laughter. His smug grin, her cold eyes, the sound of applause that turned into jeers. I woke before dawn, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. Today, I told myself. Today, the game begins. By the time I reached the office, I had a plan forming. Revenge couldn't be loud, not yet. It had to be slow, quiet, invisible, like a virus, spreading through the cracks until the whole system collapsed from within. I smiled politely when I walked past him that morning, his freshly pressed suit practically glowing with new authority. He gave me a nod, smug but pretending to be gracious. To anyone watching, it looked like mutual respect. But inside, my thoughts were blades. I started small. Harmless, almost invisible actions, adjusting shared files so small details were slightly off, numbers transposed, dates altered, formatting broken. Nothing that would point to me, nothing obvious, but just enough to seed doubt, just enough to create tiny cracks in his perfect image. When he presented later that week, I sat in the back of the room, silent as he stumbled. The numbers didn't align. The charts didn't match. Questions buzzed around the table, eyebrows raised. He covered it with a laugh, blaming system errors. But I saw it, the flicker of panic behind his eyes. And I wasn't finished. Every night after work, I stayed late again. Not to clean up after others, but to dig deeper. Every file, every email, every scrap of information that tied him to me, I copied it all. Evidence wasn't just leverage, it was power. But the anonymous emails didn't stop. The second one came 3 nights later. Subject line, "Don't trust her." Inside was nothing but a single attachment. A photo of my boss at dinner with him. Not from the office, not from a public event, something private. Taken from a distance. I stared at the grainy image, my hands cold. Someone was watching them. And now, they were watching me. Whoever this was, they wanted me to know I wasn't alone. But allies don't hide in shadows. Allies don't play games with photographs and warnings. Still, I saved the image to my hidden drive. Proof was proof, no matter the source. The days blurred into one another, the office becoming both battlefield and cage. I smiled, I nodded, I did my work. But beneath the surface, I was laying traps, gathering secrets, tightening the noose. And then, one evening as I was leaving, I found something that stopped me cold. On my desk, tucked beneath a stack of reports I hadn't touched, was an envelope. No name, no seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Written in neat, deliberate handwriting were 5 words. "He's not your only enemy." I looked around the empty office, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. The walls felt closer, the shadows heavier. My carefully built plan suddenly seemed fragile in the face of this new truth. If he wasn't my only enemy, then who else was waiting in the dark? The envelope stayed clenched in my hands long after I read the words. "He's not your only enemy." My pulse roared in my ears. The office was silent, but the silence felt alive, pressing against me, as though the walls themselves were waiting for my reaction. I stuffed the paper back into the envelope, slipped it into my bag, and forced myself to breathe. Panic wouldn't help me now. I had learned to wear masks in this place, and tonight would be no different. But inside, questions gnawed at me like teeth. Who left it? How did they get into my desk? And what did they mean? Who else could be pulling strings against me? The ride home felt endless. Every face on the train looked like a mask. Every voice was a whisper meant to distract me. I pressed my bag tightly against me, as though someone might try to steal it. Though the real danger wasn't outside, it was already woven into my life. That night, I couldn't bring myself to sleep. I laid the envelope on my desk at home, staring at it under the weak glow of a lamp. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, with no flourishes. Professional, calculated, not rushed. Whoever wrote this wanted me to take it seriously. I opened my laptop, searching again through the anonymous emails. The addresses were scrambled, encrypted. But the second message, the one with the photo of my boss and him, had metadata. I hadn't noticed before. Hidden coordinates buried deep inside the file. My breath caught. Whoever sent it hadn't wiped it clean. Maybe it was deliberate. Maybe they wanted me to find it. I copied the coordinates into a map. A location popped up across the city. An abandoned office building. 1/2 mile from ours. I stared at the screen, my stomach tightening. Why there? Why me? The urge to ignore it was strong, but curiosity and anger are a dangerous mix. By dawn, I had already decided. If someone wanted to play games with me, I would step onto their board. The next evening I went. The building was a skeleton of glass and steel. Long since emptied, its windows cracked. Its doors chained but not locked. The air smelled of rust and dust, of something forgotten. My footsteps echoed against the concrete floor as I crept inside, the weak beam of my flashlight trembling in my hand. The second floor still had fragments of old cubicles, papers shredded across the ground like fallen leaves. And there on one of the desks I saw it, an envelope. Just like the one left on mine. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a single USB drive. Nothing else, no note, no instructions. I looked around the empty space, my heart hammering. Someone had placed it there for me, recently. Maybe they were still here. I turned slowly, my flashlight slicing through the dark corners, half expecting someone to step out. But there was nothing. Just silence. Back home, I locked the doors, pulled the curtains, and plugged the drive into my laptop. The screen flickered once, then loaded a single folder. Inside were recordings. Dozens of them. Each one was a video file. I clicked the first. It showed him, my colleague, sitting at his desk, leaning close to my boss. Their voices clear, too clear. It was recorded from within the office itself. She's not strong enough to fight back, my boss said, her voice sharp. We'll cut her out, quietly. By the time she realizes, she'll already be gone. Another file, this time him on the phone, his words chilling. If she talks, if she makes noise, I'll ruin her. I'll make sure no one hires her again. I clicked another, and another. My breath quickened with each one. These weren't just stolen files or forged presentations. These were confessions, proof. Someone had bugged the office, and whoever they were, they wanted me to have this. But why? My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. If I had this evidence, I could destroy him. Destroy them both. And yet, something inside me twisted uneasily. This was too convenient, too precise. Another thought crept in, colder than the rest. What if I wasn't being helped? What if I was being used? The phone buzzed again, pulling me from the spiral. Another anonymous email. Subject, now you see. No text, just another photo. This time it was of me, taken that evening. Entering the abandoned building, I stared at it, my breath frozen in my chest. Whoever this was, they weren't just watching them. They were watching me. Every step, every move. And if they knew I had the USB, then maybe I wasn't the hunter. Maybe I was already the prey. The photo of me entering the abandoned building burned into my mind long after. I closed the email. My reflection in the darkened window across my room stared back at me with hollow eyes. Someone was out there pulling strings, and I couldn't tell if I was their weapon or their target. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my desk with the USB drive beside me, the recordings looping in my head. Every file was a dagger I could plunge into their careers. With a single move, I could expose him, destroy her, watch the empire they had built on my back crumble to dust. But power is never clean. The moment I used these recordings, I would reveal that I had them. And whoever gave them to me, whoever watched me, photographed me, tracked me, they would step out of the shadows. Did I really want to see their face? By morning, I had my answer, yes. The office greeted me with its usual hum, but something in the air had shifted. People moved differently, glancing at him with rehearsed respect. My boss strutted through the hallway like a queen on her throne, her praise for him loud enough for everyone to hear. It made me sick, but I smiled. I always smiled. That day I made my first move. A whisper here, a suggestion there. In the break room, I casually mentioned that I'd noticed errors in his presentation last week. Not accusations, just doubt. At lunch, I joked with another colleague about how quickly he had risen. How lucky he must be. The words were seeds dropped quietly, but seeds grow roots. By the time I returned to my desk, I caught the first signs. Sideways glances, muttered questions, tiny cracks in the perfect mask he wore. But doubt alone wasn't enough. Doubt was smoke. I needed fire. That night, I copied one of the recordings, the one where he bragged on the phone, about ruining me if I talked. I disguised the file name, masked its origin, and slipped it into the company's shared drive, buried just deep enough to be accidentally discovered. The next morning, the office buzzed. People whispered in corners, passing phones between them. His face when he walked in, tight jaw, narrowed eyes, told me he had heard the rumors. Someone had found it. Someone had listened. He stormed into the boss's office, slamming the door behind him. I watched from my desk, heart pounding with satisfaction. For the first time, I saw fear in him. But my triumph was short-lived. That evening, as I packed my bag, my phone buzzed again. Another email. Subject: move faster. Inside was a video attachment. I hesitated, then pressed play. The screen lit up with a feed I recognized instantly. My apartment. My living room. The camera angle from above, as though a lens was hidden in the corner of the ceiling. And there I was, sitting at my desk, staring at the USB the night I found it. The blood drained from my face. They weren't just watching me in the office. They were inside my home. My throat tightened, bile rising as I slammed the laptop shut. My hands shook uncontrollably. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was surveillance, control. I paced the room, every shadow suddenly suspicious. Were they in the walls? The vents? Every corner of my apartment felt like an eye staring back at me. Another email came seconds later. No subject, no text, just another video. This time it showed him. My colleague. Alone in his office late at night, frantically searching his computer, slamming drawers, pulling his hair. The audio was faint, but I caught the words, "Who sent it? Who sent it?" My breath hitched. Whoever the sender was, they weren't just watching me. They were watching him too. Watching all of us. And the worst part? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was exactly where they wanted me to be. I didn't sleep that night. How could I, knowing there were eyes in my home? Every creak of the floor, every gust of wind outside my window made me jolt. I unplugged my television, turned off every light, even taped over the small red dot on my laptop camera. But paranoia is a living thing. It crawled under my skin and refused to let me rest. By morning, I was hollow-eyed but burning with purpose. They wanted me to move faster? Fine, I would, but on my terms. The office felt different that day. He walked in late, his shirt untucked, his usual arrogance replaced with a jittery edge. Whispers followed him down the hall. My boss's smile had cracked too, her voice sharper when she spoke his name. Something in their perfect alliance was beginning to fracture. I kept my mask on, pretending to be oblivious. But beneath it, I was calculating. Timing was everything. At lunch, I accidentally left a file open on my computer before stepping away. A financial spreadsheet showing inconsistencies in project, budgets, numbers that pointed to him. Not theft exactly, but manipulation. Enough to spark suspicion if the right eyes saw it, and the right eyes did. When I returned, a coworker lingered too long near my desk, their gaze darting between the screen and me. I closed the file quickly, muttering about confidential reports. But the damage was done. Seeds spread faster when you pretend you didn't mean to plant them. By late afternoon, he was unraveling. His voice carried down the hall as he argued with my boss behind closed doors. I caught fragments. Set up. Not mine. You have to believe me. Her replies were muffled but icy. I should have felt triumphant. I should have savored it. But my phone buzzed again. Another message. No subject. Just 4 words. Tonight. Parking garage, alone. Attached was a short clip of the garage beneath our building. The camera panned slowly across the empty rows, then stopped on one dark corner where a single figure stood, still as a shadow. My stomach twisted. Whoever they were, they wanted me face to face. That evening, long after the office emptied, I walked down the concrete ramp into the garage. My footsteps echoed too loudly, every shadow stretching like claws. My heart thudded in my throat, each beat screaming turn back. But I didn't. I couldn't. The figure was waiting where the video had shown. Hood up, hands in pockets, still as stone. "You've been busy," the voice said. Low, distorted, almost mechanical. I couldn't tell if it was a man or woman. "What do you want from me?" My voice cracked against the walls. To finish what you started. They tossed something across the floor. It skidded toward me, a key card. I picked it up, my hands trembling. The company's logo gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. That opens the archive room, the voice continued. Inside you'll find everything. Every file, every lie, every secret they've hidden, use it. Or don't. But if you hesitate, you'll lose your chance. I swallowed hard. Why me? Why are you helping me? Silence, then almost a whisper. Because you're the only one who knows what it feels like to be erased. Before I could speak again, the figure melted into the shadows, gone as if they'd never been there. I clutched the keycard so tightly it dug into my palm. That night I didn't go home. I went straight to the archive room. The fluorescent lights flickered as I slid the keycard through the reader. The door clicked open with a heavy metallic sound. Rows of cabinets and shelves stretched before me, filled with binders, folders, hard drives. The air was thick with dust and secrets. I pulled open the first drawer. Inside were contracts with altered signatures. Another drawer, emails about cover-ups. Another. Evidence of employees forced out, silenced, destroyed. And there, in the center of it all, was a file with my name. I opened it with trembling hands. Every late-night report, every correction I'd made, every contribution I thought had vanished. It was all here. Documented, tracked, stolen. And at the back, a printed email chain between my boss and him. She's useful, but not leadership material. Keep her busy. Make sure she doesn't ask questions. My vision blurred. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped the papers. I wasn't overlooked. I was chosen to be overlooked. And now I knew. But as I slid the file back into the drawer, something glinted in the corner of the room. A tiny red light. A camera, recording every move. The red light blinked steadily from the corner of the archive room, its rhythm matching the frantic pace of my heart. My breath came shallow, ragged, as realization washed over me. Every file I had touched, every secret I had uncovered tonight, someone was recording it all. I backed away, papers still clutched in my hands, but the room felt smaller with each step. The shelves loomed like silent witnesses, their drawers stuffed with the lives of others, who had been destroyed the way I was. And now my image was added to the collection. Who was behind the camera? Was it the hooded figure from the garage? My boss? Him? Or someone else entirely, pulling all the strings from the start? I wanted to run, but the anger inside me smothered the fear. If they wanted to watch, then let them. I wasn't the one hiding in the shadows. I was the one dragging their secrets into the light. I stuffed the printed emails into my bag, snapped photos of the forged contracts, and copied entire folders onto the USB I carried. My hands shook, but not with hesitation, with purpose. By the time I walked out, my bag was heavy, but my steps were steady. The next morning, the office felt like a stage waiting for its curtain to rise. He sat at his desk, pale and restless, eyes darting around the room. My boss stayed cloistered in her office, blinds drawn, phone glued to her ear. Whispers snaked through the hallways, each one feeding on the silence between us all. And then it happened. An email pinged into the company's general inbox. A mass drop. Attached were contracts, emails, recordings. Not just his theft, not just her corruption, but everything. The cover-ups, the lies, the betrayals spanning years. It wasn't me. I hadn't sent them. The USB in my bag was still untouched. The blood drained from my face as I read the subject line. The truth belongs to everyone. Employees huddled around screens. Phones buzzed with messages spreading faster than wildfire. My boss stormed out of her office, face red, shouting for IT to trace the source. He stumbled after her, sweat dripping down his temple. But all eyes were on them now. No one clapped for him. No one bowed to her. Their empire was crumbling in real time, and I was standing right in the middle of the collapse. For a moment, I thought it was over. I thought the revenge I had planned, the revenge I had bled for, had been delivered by invisible hands. But then my phone buzzed. A message. You did well. Now it's time for the final step. Attached was a single address. I should have ignored it. I should have thrown the phone into the nearest storm drain and walked away. But the truth had already swallowed me whole, and part of me needed to see how deep the shadows went. The sun had barely set when I arrived at the building. The air reeked of rust and damp concrete. Windows were shattered, the door hanging crookedly on its hinges. My footsteps echoed through the empty halls, each one pulling me deeper into the unknown. In the center of the vast hollow space was a single chair. On it, a laptop. The screen glowed faintly, the cursor blinking as though it had been waiting just for me. I approached slowly, pulse hammering in my ears. My hands hovered over the keyboard before finally pressing a key. The screen lit up with video feeds. Dozens of them. Offices, apartments, meeting rooms. I saw my boss in her office, frantically shredding papers. I saw him pacing his apartment, drinking straight from a bottle. And then, my own apartment, my own face from last night, staring into the darkness. Dozens of lives, watched, recorded, cataloged, and then a new window opened. Live feed, of me, standing in front of the laptop. The cursor blinked, and words began to type themselves across the screen. Welcome to the other side. I froze. My reflection stared back at me from the black edges of the screen. Another line appeared. They erased you. We gave you revenge. Now you belong to us. My breath caught in my throat. Us. Before I could move, the laptop camera light blinked on. My own image filled the screen, staring back at me, wide-eyed, trapped in its glow. Behind me, I thought I saw movement, shadows, shifting along the cracked walls of the building. I spun around, but the room was empty. Empty except for the hum of machines I couldn't see. The words on the screen shifted again, slower this time, deliberate. Revenge is never free. The laptop screen flickered, and in an instant every feed went black, except mine. My face, frozen, caught in the unblinking eye. And in that silence, I understood. I hadn't won. I had been recruited. The promotion had stolen my life. But this had stolen everything.